What's going on, guys? And good afternoon. Another day. So I figured, I'd give some insight, and I feel like very important, needed information when it comes down to doing the swap on this truck, why I've done it, and just giving, some advice and things that you can look into, at least some educational or entertainment information about it. So I've had this truck for probably about 4 years now. And this truck, I believe I said before in the videos, but it used to come with the 427 tall block, industrial tall block. I think they blew it up, some time ago, and then they put a 366 tall block in it. It was bored, I think 20 or 30 over. So it was like 370 cubic inches. And then I liked it. It did pretty good for what it was. I had good torque, bottom end like at idle. And, it was a good truck and it ran good. And at the end of the day, it just, sometimes I'd put like a pretty heavy load into it. And, it would struggle to climb and, things like that. I live in the mountains, so it's got to better climb and do stuff. Otherwise, not the engine, honestly, was bulletproof. Had really good torque down low, but it had no power pretty much at all, 3,000 RPM. And this truck was originally geared with a 650 gear ratio rear end in it. And yes, it has the 2-speed high and low, but this truck, you'd be doing 3,000 RPM and maybe doing, I don't even know, probably 53, 54 miles per hour. I don't even think we're going that fast, honestly. So you're really pushing that 366. So besides the lack of top end power, it also did terrible on fuel. So if you read all the forums about these medium duty trucks, they get, 2, if you're lucky, 3 miles to the gallon. And you can build them where they get really good fuel economy if you're not hauling loads with them. You get rid of that huge box on the back, stuff like that. Just sort of lighten it, maybe chop the frame, shorten it, maybe get rid of the 2-speed rear end and put a single speed, normal, I don't know, 1 ton, 1/2 ton, axle back there, and, put some taller gearing in it, put a, at that point, you don't need a super powerful engine, because the cab on these trucks, the cab, not the front fenders and forward, but from the cab, that's just a normal 70 Chevy truck cab. The doors, all that stuff's all the same. You know what I mean? It's just everything from the fenders forward, it's its own thing. It's a medium duty truck. But, the 366, it just lacked. It was very reliable and stuff, but it just lacked overall top end power. Then, again, the fuel economy was probably the worst thing with this truck. Like I said, 2, maybe 3 miles to the gallon. So I got a mildly built 454 that was bored 60 over, so I made it 468 cubic inches. Barely mildly built, so just barely above stock. But it had good heads, 781 heads on it, Did some pretty cool stuff with that engine. It worked out really well. In between that, and then we changed the gearing to 583 gearing in the back. We got the truck up to about 5 miles to the gallon on average. So still not good fuel economy, but trust me, even though it may not sound like it, there's a big difference between 5.5 maybe at the best, fuel economy versus 2 or 3 miles to the gallon. So the truck was almost going twice as far on a tank of gas as it did with the original fuel economy with the 366. The fuel injection, we put the Sniper EFI on it. And again, like I said, up the gearing to a slightly taller gearing. It was hard because I really wanted to put taller gearing than even that. My real goal, but it was very unrealistic, but the goal is I really wanted to get the truck up to 10 miles to the gallon. And the truth is, after doing 2 engine swaps on this truck and changing the gearing and doing stuff with the truck, it actually would be possible to get this truck to 10 miles to the gallon. It's just, I wouldn't bet a hole the weight. And some of the driveways up here, they are really steep, you know, so it's, I mean, really, really steep. It'd be hard to walk up them, even if you're in good shape. That's how steep they are. So expecting your truck to pull a lot of rock, you know, up these driveways with taller gearing, it's just asking too much. So it just doesn't work to do it that way. So, you know, things had to change. So we did that. We put the 468 in, like I said, with the fuel injection, the upper gearing and stuff like that. We did gain fuel economy, almost doubled it, realistically doubled it from what it was with the 366 tall block. And then the 454 was not without its issues either, though. I thought, you know, pretty much gaining 100 cubic inches, and then obviously I did improve the fuel economy, but the 454 with the Sniper EFI, which I think I explained before in the introduction to the 8.1 swap, it was finicky. You know, the Sniper EFI, I mean, if it did not have everything the way it wanted, it just would not work. You know, if you stalled it, it wouldn't start. You'd have to turn the key on and off like 3 times to prime it to get it to start the truck. And then it ran great. Once it started, it ran great. I mean, it purred, you know. So I really played with the idea of putting a diesel Duramax. I looked into doing that, a 6.6 Duramax. I could have got a Duramax on a medium duty frame with the transmission, harness, all the computers and everything I needed to pretty much swap it into this truck. And I would have done it, but the problem with all that is there are, again, drawbacks to that. One, a diesel is not going to like higher RPM. For this truck, even now currently at the taller gearing, it'll do about 60 miles per hour at about 2,900 RPM. So it's about 500-600 RPM lower than the original gearing it had in it, which is still a big difference. But I'd have to put taller gearing in it still. So even with the Duramax in its stock form, I don't being very generous here, but let's say 700 foot-pounds of torque, it's only 150 foot-pounds of torque more than my gas engine makes that's in it now. But I'd have to spend a lot more money and time. So it'd be a lot more expensive swap. And even after I did all that, and you put taller gearing, you gotta remember, the taller gearing you put, it actually works against the torque and the power. You have less multiplication of your torque when you run taller gearing. So realistically, even if I changed it and even if I put the diesel in there, the torque actually going through those back tires is probably not going to be any higher than what I have now. You know, and the truth is, there's a chance I could actually have less torque going through my back tires than what I have now. So would I gain fuel economy? I believe so, yes. I believe that probably with the diesel, I'm sure I could probably get 10 miles to the gallon. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I would probably safely guess that it would be very possible because, again, it would have taller gearing. So it's pretty realistic that it'd probably gain at least a couple more miles to the gallon over what it gets now, which I'll share in a moment. But will it climb steep hills and stuff? Probably. It probably would. And it would probably be great. But again, assuming that everything worked out great, there's another catch. So I live in California, and in California, if I put a diesel in this truck, it now has to have DEF. It has to be smogged, even though it's a pre-smogged truck, but because it's gas, I don't have to deal with anything with the CARB regulations with California and its smog regulations and all that BS, as long as I keep a gas engine in it. But once it goes diesel, I have to follow all the way up to the most recent dates and laws and of having to do with the regulations of this truck. And they're trying to implement where you have to smog these, you know, these trucks like 4 times a year. It's just a nightmare. And you know what I mean? I love diesels. I'm a truck driver. So I drive Peterbilts. I drove by it. They're great. Don't get me wrong. But I'm not 100% sold if I put a diesel in this thing that it would really be 100% better, because I've drove medium duty diesel trucks this size and they're actually lighter, even though they have a diesel engine in them. It's just, this truck's sort of big. It's got an 8-foot wide, 14-foot long box, and it's stupid thick steel all over this truck because it's 70s. They built these things to work, you know. And they didn't care about fuel efficiency back then. So this truck's heavy. You know, it's 13,000 pounds empty with nothing in it. So, and I've drove the medium duty trucks. I would, again, I'm stretching here. I would say I'm maybe being generous when I say that they might get 10 miles to the gallon, but I'm not even sure if they do. I know a full size, this is classified as a class 6 semi truck. I know a class 8, most of the ones I drove, like the Peterbilts and things like that, they would be lucky if they got 6 miles to the gallon. And most of the time they got 3 to 4 miles to the gallon was their average. Again, mountain driving. So the medium duty trucks obviously do quite a bit better than that because they're quite a bit smaller and lighter, but still, you know, I drove it, and surprisingly, this thing will pull up a hill better than the medium duty International I drove. That was relatively new. It was maybe 5 years old, 6 years old, 7 at the most. It wasn't very old. And this truck pulls better than that does. It handles better. It turns sharper, even though the International was shorter. It just, I don't know, it just has a lot of advantages to it. And then you can't beat the price of repairs. I'm not a diesel mechanic, and I get most older diesels are easy to work on, but newer ones are, at least for me, I don't know a lot about them, so I'd have to watch a lot, try to learn, and I would have to learn to work on it myself. But a gas engine is pretty simple, and because these 8.1s are pretty simple for the most part in repairing, because they share a lot with like the LS platform, they're not difficult to work on. The parts are a little bit more expensive than your typical LS because the 496 is not a common engine. So that would be probably the downside, I'd have to say, with the 8.1 for parts. So here's the crazy part. So like I said, this truck started out 2 to 3 miles to the gallon. I'm now averaging about 7 miles to the gallon in a 13,000 pound truck. I believe it's possible to get maybe 7.5 to 8. As long as I can keep the fuel trims good. So this has been a really good truck. And anybody that works or builds one of these things, I cannot recommend the 8.1 Vortex swap enough, because the engine has been really, really good to me. It's a phenomenal engine, phenomenal. And, you know, like I said, I could have did the diesel swap, but it would have cost 2-3 times, probably, maybe more than that, than what I paid on this. I think I have maybe a total of $4,000 invested in doing this swap. You know, so $4,000 to do the swap yourself is not that bad. And honestly, if I would have did this from the get-go instead of doing the 454 and all the other crap that I did with it, honestly, I would have saved myself a lot of money. This total truck, between the engine swaps and the fuel injections and just a lot of work I've done on this truck, it's a lot. I'd probably say I have probably close to $20,000 into wrenching on this truck. And I originally bought the truck for $3,500. But it's a lot has been done to it. Electrical has been gone through. It's got LED lighting all the way around on the truck. I mean, it's got a 12,000 pound winch on top of the box. You know, it just has a lot done to it. The rim's been gone through, like I said, re-geared and everything. Brake system, kingpins on the front, steering, transmission, you know, new clutch. Second time it's already got a new clutch in it, because every time I've done the engine swap, I've put a new clutch, pressure plate, flywheel, you know, all that stuff in it. Throttle bearing, all that. So all that stuff's been done. Fluid's been changed in it. It's just a really good truck. And you know what? These things, they pay for themselves. Even though I got almost 20 grand invested in this truck's made far more than that. So, you know, you take what you can. And then if you want to go further than that, you say, okay, well, it's old. You know, I want new. Okay, new is great. I've drove new. They're cool. They're fun. But like I said, when they break down, they're very expensive. Very, very expensive. And then on top of that, the insurance is extremely expensive. My insurance, for my opinion, started out extremely expensive. When I bought this truck and I first got on the road, it was $5,000 a year to have it insured. My insurance now, even with my general liability $2 million policy and my commercial business insurance, is I'm paying about $2,000 a year now. So my insurances came way down. Hopefully it stays that way. I don't know. but $2,000 a year isn't that bad. There are people that buy new, 3/4 ton or 1 ton pickups, and they're paying that for insurance or more a year. So to own a truck that can do what this can do, which no 1 ton or 3/4 ton can even come close to it, is just phenomenal. It's phenomenal. So I can't recommend it enough, And then finally, I want to end this on is that, as you modernize everything and you start to change it out, you sort of get rid of that old C60, parts and all that other stuff, and you start to modernize everything, the parts become more readily available. When you're driving this thing and you're using it, you want to better get the parts if you can relatively quickly, or just go down to an auto parts store and better buy them if you can. And it makes it nice, So again, I love this truck. I really do love it. It's a great, great truck. And I hope that you guys are doing well. I hope you guys find content from my video. And I just appreciate you guys taking the time to watch my videos. I really do. And I hope that you like and you subscribe to them. And I'll keep trying to do more videos on different projects I work on and try to get better at making these videos. I'm still new to this stuff, but there's not a lot of stuff on the things I sort of work on. So I wanted to put something out there that was different. So I highly appreciate you guys, and thank you so much. Have a great day.